Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Mr. Mitzel bringing you the lesson recording for Monday, November 23rd, 2020. Today is an A day. Let's get right into this. Go ahead and click on your learning target and video. That's probably where you already are. If at any time you need to come back to the module to get to this video, it will be here on this screen. Let's take a look at our learning target for today. At the end of this class, I will be able to define theme and identify the theme in several selections. I will know I can do this when I've analyzed the samples, determined the theme, and provided evidence to back up my answer. I've also applied this skill to I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings and scored at least 3 out of 4 correct answers on my exit quiz. Now you want to keep this video running because I'll tell you when to pause and work independently, but let's go on to the next section. You can pop it out into a new tab, or you could just run it straight from YouTube. All right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to read and evaluate each of these sentences. Some of the sentences need commas because they have fanboys words or swabby words. You're going to highlight the fanboys words in yellow and the swabby words in green. Here are the notes from last class, just summarized for you. Fanboys words are coordinated conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Just because you see these words in the sentence doesn't automatically mean that you're going to need a comma. The only time you'll use a comma is if one of these fanboys words links to simple sentences. Both sentences need to have a subject and their own predicate. Let's look at an example. Carrie called the fire department and they arrived quickly. Here is and. Now I know that and is a fanboys word. It's on the list, but also I've done this sentence before. I'm going to look at the first half, everything before this coordinated conjunction. Carrie called the fire department. I'll ask, who or what is this about? It's about Carrie. What did Carrie do? Called the fire department. This meets the criteria for a simple sentence. It has a subject, Carrie, and a predicate. Verb, called. Called the fire department is the full predicate. Now I evaluate this side. They arrive very quickly. Who or what is this about? Well, it's about they, referring to the fire department. What did they do? They arrived quickly. This satisfies the criteria for being a simple sentence. Both have a predicate, both have a subject. The fanboys word and joins them. That means I need to put a comma before and. Actually, I need to put it right after the word department. Leave a space between your comma and the fanboys word. Now, how do you record all of this? Go to the top of your screen and click this blue Submit Assignment button. It'll pop out a box below. We're going to copy these 9 sentences, Control-C, Control-V. Now, let's do that markup that we just talked about. I'm going to highlight the fanboys word and. I'm going to mark it yellow. I've already met the criteria for the 2 simple sentences, one before and one after, which means that I'll put my comma right here after the word department. Now, so it shows up on your screen, I'm going to highlight it yellow, but that's not needed for this assignment. Now, there is a second type of conjunction called swabby. Swabby is very similar, except in this case, it stands for since, when, after, because, and if. Now, these are different than fanboys words, and here's one way. The fanboys words that are on this list, that's it. There are no others. Just those 7 words. Swabby, there's a lot more. We call these subordinating conjunctions. But since, when, after, because, and if are some of the most popular, and there are more. In fact, I've included a number of them. Again, the most popular, the ones that you'll see the most in writing: while, although, before, in order to, whether, even, as. So, like a fanboys word, a swabby word needs to have a comma, but only in one instance. Use a comma if a swabby clause begins the sentence. Notice that I didn't say a swabby sentence or a swabby phrase. A swabby clause is going to be very similar to a simple sentence, except it can't stand alone. Carrie called the fire department. It can stand alone. It's a fanboy's sentence, right? It's a simple sentence is what we're going to call it. We also call these independent clauses. They're independent of any other information. They make sense by themselves. But a SWABI clause is not independent. It's what we call dependent. It depends on additional information, but it's a clause because it has a subject and a predicate. Let me show you one in practice. Going down to sentence number 2. Again, I've already done this, so I know the correct answer, but I want to show you as a model. After he got home, that cannot stand on its own. It doesn't make sense. It depends on more information. What did he do after he got home? Who is he? We don't know that information, and it's because of this word after. After he got home doesn't make sense. I'm going to highlight it green, the word after, because that's a SWABI word. I'm going to come up here to my list and notice it's right here. SWABI words include the word after. Now, the SWABI word is at the beginning of the sentence. In my notes, it says use a comma if a SWABI clause begins the sentence. This part right here, after he got home, is a SWABI clause. I'm going to put my comma in. Now, just because I put the comma in, it doesn't mean that I'm finished. I still want you to look at the rest of the sentence. And if you checked out and you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about, he got home is a simple sentence by itself. But as soon as you attach a SWABI word to it, it becomes what we call a dependent clause. Let's look to see if there's an independent clause. We have to have one. In order for this whole thing to make sense, we have to have our dependent SWABI clause and an independent clause. Now, our independent clause is not going to have a fanboys or a SWABI in it acting as a fanboys or a SWABI. It's just going to have a subject and a predicate and make complete sense. My father read us a story. Who or what read us a story? What is this sentence about? It's about my father. Now we ask, what did my father do? Read us a story. Father is the subject. That's who it's about. What did he do? That's the predicate. Read us a story. If we have this construction, SWABI clause first, independent clause second, then we have to separate them with a comma. Now, I do want to show you something really quickly. If I copy and paste this and I switch this around, so let's take after my father got home, or after he got home, and I add it to the back side of my sentence. Now I'll read it. Note that the word after is still highlighted. My father read us a story after he got home. That makes sense. The whole thing is the same information as this right here. These two things say the same thing. It's just that the after he got home comes first in this first example. And in the second example, after he got home comes second. This is still a SWABI word. It still acts as a SWABI word, but we don't use a comma. Here's why. In our notes, it says, don't use a comma if the SWABI is within the sentence. If it's at the beginning, you do. If it's at the end or the middle, I should just say the middle, you don't. One last illustration. My father read us a story we said is independent. Carrie called the fire department. We said is independent. My father read us a story in this sentence is independent. They arrive very quickly is independent. Notice that whenever we have an independent second, we have to use a comma. When we have an independent first, followed by an independent, we use a comma. If we have an independent first, followed by a dependent, we do not use a comma. If we have a dependent first, followed by an independent, we use a comma. That's 3 different ways to describe the same thing. I just want you to notice, if it's a SWABI word and it comes first, you're going to use a comma. If it's a SWABI word and it comes in the middle, you don't. If it's a fanboys word, it's in the middle, and you have 2 independents, you do use one. If you have a fanboys word in the middle, yet you are missing an independent, you only have one, you're missing one on one side, you will not use a comma. That's all represented up here in the notes. I want you to pause, take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and I want you to do we can delete this because you don't need it, number 3, 4, 5, and 6. Do these 4. Once you're finished, come back and I'll go over the answers with you. Then you'll finish 7, 8, and 9 by yourself for your grade. All right, let's look at our answers this far. Maria bought potato salad and let's say that again. Maria brought potato salad and homemade ice cream to our neighborhood cookout. I found this word and, which is obviously, the same word as our fanboys word and I read this part, Maria brought potato salad. That can stand on its own. Who or what is it about? Maria, what did she do? Brought potato salad. It's an independent clause. I look at this side now. Homemade ice cream to our neighborhood cookout. You have to evaluate this by itself. Homemade ice cream to our neighborhood cookout. Who or what is this about? It's about homemade ice cream. What did homemade ice cream do? To our neighborhood cookout? To our neighborhood. Is that action? No, it's not. This is not an independent clause. Let's look at our notes again. It says must join 2 simple sentences, also known as independent clauses. We don't have a simple sentence highlighted here in blue. We do not have a fanboys word. We do not add a comma. In fact, look what it's saying. Maria brought potato salad and she brought ice cream. Everything else is sort of incidental. This is just a prepositional phrase telling us where she brought the potato salad and ice cream. Look at number 5. The magician pulled a rabbit from his hat. Who or what pulled the rabbit from his hat? The magician. Who or what is the sentence about? The magician. What did the magician do? He pulled the rabbit from his hat. Magician is the subject. I've been asking you, who or what is the sentence about? That's the subject. Then I have been asking you, what did the subject do? That's the predicate. This is a simple sentence. Now let's evaluate everything after the fanboys word. Again, how did I know this was a fanboys? I went up and I just looked here at my list, and it's in my notes. The audience did not applaud. Who or what is this sentence about? The audience. What did they do? Well, they did not applaud. They actually didn't do something, but did not applaud is the predicate. It's the actionable thing. I have a simple sentence in the beginning, also known as an independent clause. I have a simple sentence at the end, also known as an independent clause. It's linked with a fanboys word. I must use a comma. All right, number 6. Our mother is an amazing cook because our mother is an amazing cook because she used to work in a restaurant. I have a Swabi word because. How did I know it was a Swabi? I went back up and I looked at my list. Here it is. I selected it and highlighted it green. Now I read everything at the beginning. Now, if I remember my notes correctly, my notes say, use a comma if Swabi begins the sentence. Don't use it if Swabi is in the middle of the sentence. Well, right now, because you're a smart person and I'm a smart person, I know that the Swabi word because is in the middle of the sentence. There's a 100% chance that I am not going to use a comma right here, but I still want to check it. And if I'm thinking correctly, everything in front of the Swabi word should be an independent clause or a simple sentence, which are the same thing. Our mother is an amazing cook. Who or what is this about? It's about our mother. What is this saying about our mother? Well, she is an amazing cook. Yes, that can stand all on its own. Now I'm going to look at everything after it. Do I have a Swabi clause? Remember that a Swabi clause has to have a subject and a predicate. She used to work in a restaurant. Sure, that could stand on its own, except we have the word because. Now listen to it. Is this a dependent clause? Well, the answer is going to be yes, but listen to why it's a dependent clause. It's going to depend on more information. Because she used to work in a restaurant, that can't stand on its own. I need more information. Because she used to work in a restaurant, what? This SWABI clause appears at the end of the sentence. We do not use a comma. Now, I could copy this and put it at the front. And if I started my sentence with our SWABI word because, I would have to use a comma after the word restaurant because all of this would be at the beginning. All right. If you need to see this explanation again, rewind the video. Otherwise, I'd like you to finish 7, 8, and 9. You're going to submit this whole assignment for your grade. Feel free to look back at the notes if you need to. Go back to yesterday's lesson for a more, or Friday's lesson for a more detailed explanation if you need some in-depth analysis. All right, when you're finished, click submit and then click next. All right. On this screen, you're going to see just a breakdown of the idea of a theme in a story. This is an anchor chart for you to come back to. Two different ways of explaining the same thing. A theme is the message in a story. Think of it like a moral. The moral of the story is, it's the moral takeaway. It's the thing that the author wants you to learn. It's the thing that you may have learned. It's the truism. It's something that we could agree about, or it's something that we might apply when talking about human nature. What did you learn from the story that can apply to your real life? That's basically the question that you'll ask after reading a piece of fiction or narrative nonfiction. The theme is the main message, which is different than the topic. Okay. I don't want you to think that the topic that they're talking about is the moral. It's what you're supposed to do about the topic. And we're going to look at a couple of examples. This is just for your reference to come back to, but your big takeaway should be that the theme is the main message or moral. Click next on your screen. All right, once it's loaded, you're going to see that there's a short video on this screen for you to watch. This is Mr. Santo, and he does a good job of talking about theme and how to find a theme. He goes into pretty good detail. I'm going to give you some notes that cover pretty much the same thing, but if you want a different person explaining the same thing and in a slightly different way, I recommend you click on his video and you watch it. Once you have a general idea of how to find the theme, click on this tool below. Now, you're going to keep my video running at the same time. I'm going to give you the notes to fill in, and as you can see, you'll have a couple of slides, or you won't have a couple of slides that I have, okay? Here's a reminder of your learning target. You are going to be able to identify the theme in several selections. You'll know you've been successful when you've identified the theme in the samples, and then you've been able to apply it to I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Okay. You're going to start on this slide, the one that has the light bulb on it. You'll notice that there's two blanks. You'll click on the blank and type the word that I have on my slide. So you're probably going to want to be in dual view. Now, if you noticed, I actually clicked up here on this blue title. I did that so that I would have a better view of my notes page. You probably want to do the same thing since you're going to be working on two slides at once. All right, what we're looking at here is how are words powerful? Specifically, how is the theme powerful? Why does the author choose to include a theme in his or her work? Take a look at my screen and you'll notice that there's this big yellow card. This big yellow card has a little tiny window in it and there's an image being hidden behind the card. All you can see is this little piece of the image. And from this evidence, from this little image right here, a little piece of the image. I want you to guess what I'm hiding. I want you to guess what's behind the card. What image is it? You could pause the video and think about it for a minute. When you come back, I'm going to reveal it to you. All right, if you paused the video or if you didn't, if you're just sitting there listening, then that's okay. Did you think it was cheese? That's what a lot of students have said. Did you think it was the sun? Did you think it was a flower? Those are all things that students have said in the past, but no one has been able to accurately guess what I have hidden behind the card. In fact, you don't have enough evidence. This is just one small piece. It was a parrot. Now, why I show you this as an illustration. The parrot is like the larger theme. And throughout the reading, you're going to get little hints or little clues at the theme. And one of those hints or clues is not enough to come up with the theme. In fact, you need lots of little pieces of evidence to determine the theme that the author intends, the moral takeaway, the lesson to be learned. In fact, many times it's built across the entire story, the entire novel, and it's not revealed until the end. Keep that in mind when you're delving into theme. You're never going to be able to come up with a theme if you haven't read the entire story. Here are the keys to understanding and finding a theme in something that you're reading. Now, your notes are going to start right now. You have 2 blanks on your page. You'll have to pause this video to type your answers in or to type your notes in. This does not exist outside of the video, but if you were in class today, when I gave this lesson, I would pause for the students so they could fill them in. You will need to refer back to these notes when you complete your work, though. All right, the theme is the central idea in a work of literature. It's the moral of the story or the life lesson. Pause the video and type your notes in. Next, you're going to type the word reader. The theme applies to the reader, not just the characters in the story. Okay? So when you're reading and the character learns something about themselves or about life, that also applies to us as the reader. The example I like to go to is The Hunger Games, because Katniss Everdeen is such a dynamic character. She changes throughout each of the stories. She's a very different person at the end of book 3 than she was the beginning of book 1. And the lesson that she learns is about leadership and how you have to not just think about yourself, but think about others, especially those who can't take care of themselves or can't defend themselves. And she learns about power. That theme or moral or moral takeaway also applies to us and is kind of teaches us that we need to look out for more than just ourselves, that there are people that we'll come across in our lives that can't defend themselves or stand up to injustice. And when we have the power to do so, we should. Next, you're going to type in what about and nugget of wisdom. So how do you find the theme? Begin by asking, what is the story about? Then form your answer into an opinion, into a full sentence. The theme will always be a full sentence. Instead of saying, oh, this story is about love, or the theme is love, think about or ask, what about love? What are they trying to teach me about love? And then word it in a way that reads like a nugget of wisdom. If you haven't typed in your notes yet, pause the video, and then you can play again when you're done. Now, if you come up with the theme or think you're approaching the theme, you need to provide evidence to back up your idea. Ask the following questions. There's going to be 4 of them to find details to determining the theme. You'll type the word evidence and the word details. Pause the video, type in your notes, and then play once you're finished. Here are the 4 questions. You'll type the word change, human nature, title, and conflict. Evidence number 1, ask, how does the main character change in some way? Like I just told you with the Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games, she learns about being a leader. Evidence number 2, what clues or statements does the author make that tell you about human nature? The author might give you the theme at the end, but it has to do with like the way people are. You may have heard of Aesop's fables. They're these stories that are supposed to teach us a lesson. And one of my favorites is called The Raven and the Cheese, or The Fox and the Cheese. It's the same story, despite what it's called. But basically, it has to do with a fox that comes walking through one day and sees a raven, like a crow, sitting up in a tree. And the raven has a piece of cheese in its beak, ready to eat it. And the fox says, "Oh, Miss Raven, I heard what a lovely singing voice you had." Now, crows and ravens are not known for their beautiful songs. They're not songbirds. In fact, they caw and crow and make a horrible, hideous sound. The raven starts to think to herself, well, maybe I do have a good singing voice. Again, the fox pushes and says, Miss Raven, could I just hear a few notes of your beautiful song? The raven starts to think, I do have a beautiful song. And finally, the fox says, please, just a single note from your song, just a single note, and I could get on with my day. Now the raven, full of pride, opens her beak, lets out a hideous caw, and in so doing drops the cheese, of which the fox comes by and gobbles up. The fox didn't care about the raven song. The fox wanted the cheese. And there's a message or a moral takeaway about human nature. We are easily, as people, we are easily puffed up by pride or flattery from others. And we learn something about flattery in this story. So what is it about? Well, it's about flattery. What about it? Well, don't listen to everything everyone has to say, because they might actually not have your best interest in mind. They may be saying it to get something from you or to take advantage of you. That's just an example of a story that teaches us about human nature. Evidence number 3, look for clues in the title. The title, the Fox and the Cheese, or the Raven and the Cheese, is telling. It points us in the right direction. It helps us know that the theme is going to have to do with that piece of cheese, or with that raven, or with the fox. Dig a little bit deeper into the meaning of the title and think, how does the title relate to the larger work? And then finally, look at the main conflict. Who wins and why did they win? The fox won. Why did the fox win? Because he tricked the raven by making her feel prideful. Right, if you've ever seen the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or read the book Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, we can easily determine the theme. Here's a little synopsis if you haven't read it, and it's enough for us to figure it out. In the story, a group of children win a trip to the mysterious candy factory. Along the way, they are eliminated until only one child is left. The children get picked off one at a time when they act in a greedy or selfish way. And in the end, only Charlie is left. Charlie doesn't act selfish, or he doesn't act greedy. The topic is greed or selfishness. So we ask, what life lesson can we learn from this? Or what are they trying to tell us about greed? What are they trying to tell us about selfishness? Well, we know that since the children get punished when they're greedy, because one of them falls into a river of chocolate and gets stuck in a pipe. Another one snatches some gum that she's not supposed to have and she turns into a blueberry. Another girl is thrown into a trash incinerator because she tries to steal a goose that lays chocolate eggs. Or if you saw the movie, it was a squirrel. Mike TV, another character, gets shrunk because he's addicted to television and he wants to be on TV. Well, the kids are punished because they don't think of others. They don't listen, or they don't obey, and they certainly don't hear when the people in charge are telling them not to do something. So these kids get punished because of their greed. Maybe that's the lesson. Greed will be punished, or selfishness. Selfishness gets punished, or selfishness has consequences. Here's another example. I'm going to play this song for you, and while it's playing, I want you to listen to the message. You may have heard this. It might not be your style of music, and that's okay. So we want to listen The topic is a relationship between a father and a son. We just generally said it's family relationships, but listen to the story that's in Harry Chapin's Cats in the Cradle. All right, so we heard this story and set to song. It's a song that has a story in it. In the beginning, the dad said that he wanted his son to grow up just like him, but the father was too busy to spend time with his son. The son wanted to play with the ball, and the father said, "Oh, not right now. I can't. I'm too busy. Work is in the way." Then the son goes off to college and comes back, and the father says, "I'd like to spend some time with you." And the son says, "Can't, Dad. I'm too busy. Can I have the car keys?" And then when the father is old, the father calls up the son and hasn't talked to him in a while and says, "I'd like to see you if you have some time." And the son says, "Oh, my work is busy and the kids are sick, but it's been nice talking to you on the phone." And the story culminates or ends with the dad saying, and then it occurred to him, or then he realized that his son had grown up just like him. See, the dad didn't have time for his son when the son was young, and the son didn't have time for the dad when the son was in the same position. So I think there's a lesson to be learned there. It has to do with family relationships, and it has to do with raising children, and it has to do with spending time with the people that you love and care about. I think the theme of this story is cherish the time you have together because it'll be gone soon, or raise your children in a way that you want, or children are learn their lessons through actions more than words. Each of those themes, I think, is valid. And this is a good illustration of how one story can teach us multiple things. Remember that we want to put our theme in a sentence. We could say the theme of Harry Chapin's Cats in the Cradle is, and then we would write the rest of our sentence. So the theme is raise your children the way you want them to be, or children actions speak louder than words, or cherish the time that you have because it won't be around forever. All right. Lastly, if you're familiar with the movie The Lion King, you should be able to get the theme of this story. In The Lion King, Simba, the young lion pictured here, um, his father is murdered by his uncle, and he's blamed for the murder. He's told by the uncle that it was his fault, and out of shame and grief, he runs away. His uncle says, to leave and never come back. Run away from your problem. He grows up running away, and he's later discovered, and it's shared with Simba that the whole kingdom is just falling apart under his uncle's rule, and he needs to come home to help his family. And Simba says, "That's not my problem. I don't need to go back. I won't ever go back." Well, he's eventually convinced, and when he does reclaim his spot as the king, um, he does see the problems, and he's able to have an epic battle, and of course he wins, but he learns a valuable lesson. The topic is about responsibility and problems. Think for a minute and then put your theme in your notes. See if you can determine it. And from what I've just said to you, it should be enough if you've never seen the movie or you don't know the story. I think the theme is you can't run away from your problems, or you can't run away from your responsibility. Is that what you came up with? Now, keep these notes handy, and we're going to go back and do our final activity. In Canvas, click Next. And then you're going to, you'll see that here's your I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Remember that our learning targets today is to determine the theme. Now, on Friday, you started reading, and some people finished, other people haven't started yet. So you'll need to read the story. If you click on the tool, I've actually included it here in your assignment. Your assignment is going to be to develop 4 questions. I've given you the criteria here on the left, and then you're going to come up with a theme and then give 3 pieces of evidence that support the theme. Your 3 pieces of evidence can be quotes or paraphrases. Always explain. Always explain. Don't just put it in and think, assume that I know. The text is down below. Here are the 4 types of questions that you're going to develop. You put the question in and you're going to put your answer in. Don't put a question in without an answer. I can't give you credit for it. Here's your first type of question. It's a question that the answer can be found right there in the text. It might be, what's the name of a character's brother? Or what's the name of the store? Or what's the setting? If you can find it right there in the text, that's a good question. Put in the answer. Question number 2, create a question that the words are in the text, but maybe not spelled out for you. It might be, how does the character feel? Let me show you where this appears in the text as an example. She talks about here about quietly punishing herself. For every bad judgment, the fine was no silver-wrapped kisses. They're talking about Hershey's Kisses, the sweet chocolate drops that I love more than anything in the world except Bailey, and maybe canned pineapple. You might put in, why does she punish herself? Or what does this show? All right. Or you might say, my obsession with pineapple nearly drove me mad. I dreamed of days when I would be grown and able to buy a whole carton for myself alone. You might ask, what is she obsessed with, or why is she obsessed with them? And she talks about how she only gets them once a year. That's actually right there in the text. I'm going to let you look for it rather than for me to do the work. Question number 3 is a little bit of a harder question for the person who would have to answer it. Remember that you're going to provide the question and the answer kind of like you're making a quiz. Create a question that uses what you've learned from the reading combined with what the author says. You can start it out, and I want you to use these words. Why does the author blank? Why does the author tell us about, let's use the pineapple example again. Why does she use the example of pineapple to tell you something about Maya's attitude or Maya's personality? Or why does the author describe Mrs. Flowers in this way? And your answer would be to show, and then you'll put the rest of the answer in. So why does the author do this? To show this. And then finally, this will be the hardest question for the person taking your quiz to answer. Create a question that requires your reader to use what they learned from the text. So begin with, why do you think? So maybe it says, why do you think Maya became friends with Mrs. Flowers? Or why do you think that Maya only wrote in school? Okay, those are things that are in the text. Now, you don't have to use my questions. I'd actually like you to come up with your own. And then make absolutely sure that you're putting in your answers here. And then your final thing is to write the theme of the story. What's the moral lesson? What did Maya learn that we too can learn? And then what pieces of evidence support that theme? So maybe they're quotes that point to that lesson, or maybe there's sections of text where Maya is talking about learning something, or where you know that she's learned something. Right, when you're finished with this, you'll click submit. There is a 4-question exit quiz at the end if you go back. It's very simple and straightforward. It's just multiple choice. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message in Canvas, and I'd be happy to get back to you. All right, I look forward to seeing you in class. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.